Welcome, everyone, to today's Bite-Size Talk. It's an honor today to have Phil with us, who is going to talk about not NF Core specifically, but the Nextflow plugin registry that was just released recently during the Nextflow summit, right? So the floor is all yours.
Thanks very much, Sam. This is just a quick little bite size. It's quite an informal one, but it's. I wanted to call out one of the new things that we've released with Nextflow in the Nextflow ecosystem, which was at the Nextflow Summit, as Fan said, just a few weeks ago at the end of October 2025. I want to talk a little bit about how plugins work, like how plugins used to work, how they work now with the new registry, what that means for you, and why it's a good thing if you're developing plugins and why plugins might be interesting for you. It comes with a caveat that there are other people who are better qualified than me to talk about this. Obviously, like the Nextflow dev team and knows the most. And then I've also never really written or published a Nextflow plugin myself, so I am slightly making stuff up as I go along. And I know like there's plenty of people in the community, such as Nicholas and others, who have written plugins which are very well used, and they have great experience with this. So um, do call me out if you think I say anything that's wrong. And as usual, jump into Slack if you want to discuss this further and can pull in more details. But I'll do my best. Anyway, so yeah, what am I talking about? The TLDR, if you're only hanging around for the first 1 minute of this talk, is there's a new website called registry.nextflow.io, which looks like this. And we've called it the Nextflow plugins registry. And the first thing that it can do is provide a user interface for you as a Nextflow user and pipeline developer to find plugins, because until now we haven't really had anywhere where you can just view what plugins are available for the community, and there are quite a few. So now you can actually like look at a big list and you can say browse plugins and you can see there's 54 of them. Now, some of these are like what we call kind of core plugins for Nextflow. NF Amazon is basically part of Nextflow. So when you use AWS Executor in Nextflow, it's using code which is in the NF Amazon plugin, which is not actually part of the core code base, which means that we can kind of update those plugins for those executors faster than the main Nextflow version itself, which is useful if things change in the cloud environment and so on. So some of these are by the Nextflow team, and actually the source code for NF Amazon is within the main Nextflow repository. But many of these are community driven, and you might see ones such as NF Backtopia, where if you know about the Backtopia pipeline by Robert Petit, you might recognize that name. And sure enough, he did a talk on Nextflow Summit about this plugin. So check that out if it's interesting. And you can see there's a whole bunch in here of different plugins doing different things. When you click through to them, you find some information about kind of where they live, if they have a project URL. Some of them have descriptions and things. And you can see all the different versions that have been published of this plugin. And we also have some stats. So we have total downloads and the kind of download counts per version and stuff. Pretty soon we should have some plots. This was mostly done ahead of the summit, but it didn't quite get merged and deployed in time. So it needs a little bit of tidying up. But soon there'll be some nice pretty plots as well. So you'll be able to get a feel for how popular plugins are. To give an impression, we've got 7.7K here. If I go to one of the core ones like Amazon, you see it's got like millions of downloads because it's part of Nextflow. And if you look at a community one, such as NF Schema, which is in the NF Core template, you can see it's very, very popular and it has lots of downloads as well. These download counts are quite new because the plugin registry has only just been launched. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You can now find stuff, and the interface is a little bit clunky still, but we're hoping to improve this over time. But basically, you can now at least list all the pages in a kind of useful way, find stuff, see what it does, at least a little bit, and then hopefully pull those into your pipelines and use them, which is a good thing. Now, how does this work? Right. So to explain this and why it's new and why we've done it, I want to talk a little bit about how it used to work for those people who haven't gone through the process of publishing a plugin up until now. So in the old days, Nextflow had a very rudimentary system for finding plugins, which there was a repo. Actually, this is the wrong one. This is a private test one, but it's the same. It's exactly the same structure in the Nextflow org called plugins, and in it, it just had a JSON file, and in that JSON file, there's a list of every single version of every single plugin. And you can see the scroll bar here is rather tiny. This JSON file started off quite manageable several years ago, but it's got a bit out of hand. So what happens when you launch Nextflow basically is it fetches this JSON file from GitHub, however many 4,000 lines of JSON, and it looks at it and passes to JSON. And if in your config you have specified like NF schema or NF Amazon or whatever, it finds that plugin name and looks up the version that you pinned if you pinned it, and it looks at the URL and downloads the plugin and checks the SHA and everything, and also checks which versions of Nextflow required. It's very simple. It has worked well for many years. But as you can see by the fact that this JSON file is absolutely huge, it's not really built to scale. We can't just keep dumping new versions of new plugins in here forever. This JSON file is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and start to have noticeable effects. And that was starting to happen. So the download obviously is not immediate. It's still small enough it didn't really matter. But if GitHub goes down, then suddenly you can't launch your Nextflow pipeline because it can't find the plugins, which is a bit of a problem. So we were tied to the GitHub infrastructure, which was causing people issues. And also it was just very simplistic. If you wanted to add a new plugin to the registry, you had to open a pull request where you just like basically manually add a bunch of JSON in here. And several times in the past, like malformed JSON had been put in by accident, which then took down the registry for everybody. A long time ago, I put in some tests for this, just like at least just have a JSON schema for this to try and validate the structure. But even so, it was pretty clunky. You had to put in a pull request, and then you had to usually go on Slack and say, Phil or Ben or someone, can you come and merge my pull request so that the plugin can be published? So it was very dependent on the Nextflow core team. It was very clunky and didn't scale well. And it was also had reliability issues because we were relying on GitHub hosted. So with the new plugin registry, basically this part has been switched out. There's now a plugin backend sitting here with an API. And now instead of calling GitHub, Nextflow calls the new registry API. It doesn't have to download a huge thing of JSON. It just says, hey, I'm looking for a plugin called this at this version. Can you tell me if it exists? And if so, where to get it? Much simpler, much more reliable, faster, and better. There's some other cool stuff that we can do as well. So for those of you using VS Code with a new language server for Nextflow, you get all this intelligence like stuff as you type the code where basically the language server knows about the Nextflow syntax. When you're typing configs, it can validate the config as you write it. But those of you who have been early adopters then may have noticed that if you have like a config block, which is specific to a plugin, so if I go to schema, for example, if I go to configuration, you can see that the NF schema has a bunch of config specific to it. So in your Nextflow config file, you can have validation. Now, the language server doesn't know about this because this is not in core Nextflow language. And that's a problem. So when you run Nextflow, it's fine because it downloads the plugin and it runs and executes all that code, and then it knows about the config scope. But the language server operates with static compilation ahead of that, and we don't want to be doing that. So what we do with the plugin registry is a neat little trick where when you upload a new version to the registry can look at all that code, do some analysis, and figure out if any config spaces have been declared. And if so, it can expose them via an API. So now when you're using the language server, if you include a plugin, the language server calls that API and says, are there any config scopes for this plugin? And then it knows about them. And then you get nice, proper, deep validation and no false positive errors on these config scope options. This is a bit nerdy, sorry, but it's quite cool. And it's just one example of the kind of thing that we can do when we host a backend, is we can do much more clever tricks and operate on the specific APIs, which we know are useful to Nextflow and the Nextflow community. Okay, and the final piece that makes this really cool is that it's now much, much easier to write a plugin. So if I go to Nextflow, there's I want to say, and I can't remember the name of it, is it NF Hello? There is an old plugin template. Yeah, this is the one. So this is the one that until now, basically everyone used to write a plugin. If you wanted to write a plugin, you went and looked at this, figured out how it worked, and built your own one off it and kind of forked it. What you might notice is there's a lot of code in here. There's almost kind of basically wrapper boilerplate code in here, which handles all the bundling for Nextflow. What we've done with the new registry is we've also got a new plugin template, which is much, much simpler to use. It basically handles and defers much of the logic so that you have a lot less code in your plugin, There's a Nextflow plugin, which is a plugin to write Nextflow plugins, which bundles all of that for you. So that's all standardized and you don't have to think about it. And then you can just go to this repo, which is an NF plugin template. And it's set up as a GitHub template repository, which means that you can just create a new one. So it's not forking, it's creating a new GitHub repo based on this one and then customize it with your own code. If that's not easy enough for you, you can also load up a terminal and do Nextflow plugins. Can't type. I'm also going to do help plugins. So there's a new subcommand within Nextflow called plugin, sorry, singular. And you can do Nextflow plugin create. And this will take you through a wizard, which will help you to create your own new plugin. So I call it full demo. Yes. And then we have scaffolded a new plugin here, which you'll see is basically the same as the files we've got down here. So it's based on the same source code, but it's just like super easy to get started. And this fills in a bunch of template variables so that you can get a kickstart into your new plugin. Okay, that's quite a lot. If you're still with me, I'm going to show you a nice website that I found just a few days ago, which has got nothing to do with plugins, but I think is useful and everyone should know about it. And it's called Cat as a Service. And you just put in a URL like cat/gif, and it gives you a random cat gif every time you load it. There you go. I hope to see more cat gifs in everyone's website. Website. Anyway, plugin registry. There's like two more things I want to mention, and then I'll wrap up. Firstly, if you develop a plugin, there's a process for what's called claiming the plugin. So basically, we also have a bidirectional sync in with the old GitHub plugins.json. So if you publish on the new registry, it will automatically be synced to that old JSON file so that people using previous older versions of Nextflow can still access your plugin because those don't know about the new registry. And the other thing is, in order to publish a plugin, you need to basically, the first time, claim the name of that plugin, which is basically kind of setting up the project in the first place. Once you've done that, then you are basically owner of that plugin. So if we go over to Backtopia, okay, I need to be in the admin view to see it, but we would see that it's owned by Robert. And after that, that person kind of owns that plugin and can push releases whenever they want. So there's no kind of bottleneck from us. The other thing is there's a bunch of new documentation here. So using plugins, developing plugins, and publishing plugins. If you're interested in any of these topics, go and check this out. This plugin documentation has been pretty much completely rewritten, largely by Chris Hackett, who's well known to many of us in the community, and is now really, really nice and much more comprehensive and much more kind of, it takes you through step by step how to do everything, how to set up your key, how to claim a plugin name, and all this kind of stuff. So check it out, have a look, and hopefully we'll see some more plugins coming in. It's a really good way to take a special complex code out of your pipeline and provide it into a reusable kind of way that you can use across multiple pipelines. So yeah, check it out. And if there's anyone has any questions, let me know. And otherwise, I think I'll call that a day for this particular bite-sized talk.
Yeah, thank you very much. I love your dedication to put GIFs in any of your talk.
We'll see if people are falling asleep while still listening.
So anyone can now unmute themselves if I want to ask a question. I will just read out the one that we already got from Matthias. Very important. Will there be a dark mode for the plugin registry?
Let me see if I can do something for you here, Matthias. I'm just going to buy back. There you go. Did it. Fixed it for you.
Yes, but yes.
Yeah. No, not on the immediate roadmap. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll do it as a fun evening project one day.
So, do we have any more questions? Well, I was actually wondering for NF core pipelines, we usually have a process of how to add pipelines, and you need to get the okay first. Is there a similar thing for plugins, or is this basically the Wild West. Anything goes.
No, there is a process. Like that bit I mentioned where you have to claim the plugin. So I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to accidentally show some sensitive information. But if I click login at the top, I'm an admin and I get there's a page and also we get an email every time someone requests a new plugin kind of namespace. So that first claim is the review point, basically, where the Nextflow team has to say, like, does this plugin sound like it's real, or is it just like a spam bot, or is it someone's trying to scam the community or whatever? So that's why it's important to put in like a URL and stuff because we will go and manually check that and make sure that it looks safe. But once it's claimed, it's kind of over to you because we don't want to be checking every single release. We're not doing code reviews or anything like that. We're just sort of doing a quick sanity check.
Hmm.
There is, we have also added more. There's a bunch of stuff we're adding behind the scenes all the time. One of the things we've added quite recently is the ability to revoke a plugin release. So if something dangerous or like very buggy got released, we can yank that now. We can pull it back out again or mark it as depreciated. So there's some safety features we can build in, and we're going to think more about that in the future as we go forward as well. We want to add in stuff like security scanning and some other things.
Hmm. But is there any guidelines on what would make a good plugin and what would potentially not be okay, except for it being from a bot?
At the moment, no, it's just common sense.
Hmm.
So if you do one that's going to use the user's computer to run Bitcoin mining, it's probably not going to get accepted. But yeah, no, at the moment it's just common sense. We haven't written up any guidelines.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions?
I meant to give a call out to the NF Core utils plugin, which I forgot to do. But you can see it's been developed by Edmund and Maxime and Claude recently. And so this is an active project at the moment to build out a plugin for NF Core to help simplify some of the template, basically to try and get rid of some of the boilerplate code in the NF Core template to make it a bit more streamlined. So yeah, if you're interested, check that out. There's a Slack channel about it.
Great. So now we also managed to get some NF Core in there. Wonderful.
Exactly.
Okay. I guess if there are any more questions, one can always go to the Nextflow Slack. Is there a plugin channel in Nextflow Slack?
Let me see. Yes. Nextflow plugins.
Wonderful.
It's called rather uninspired name, but it's there.
That's
I have
how
a
it's
feeling.
supposed to be.
Yeah. And yeah, we also, I think the same channel, the same channel was shared into the NF Core Slack. So you can find it in either Slack. It's called Nextflow plugins.
Great.
Yeah. And there's also channels for like some of the ones I showed, like the CO2 footprint channel. Like that has its own channel. There's one called NFP plugins, which is not to be confused with this because that's for NF test plugins, which is a whole different thing. But yeah, exactly. Hop in there and fire off any questions.
So yeah, join us on Slack if you have any more questions or suggestions. And otherwise, I hope to see most of you again next week. I think it's next week for the next bite size, maybe in 2 weeks. I have to check. Otherwise, thank you so much, Phil, for your time and for this nice introduction to the plugin registry. And have a great day, everyone.